The morning sun cast long shadows across the parking lot of Fort Benning Military Academy as Maria Rodriguez stepped out of her 10-year-old pickup truck. She smoothed down her simple blue dress, the one she'd bought at the thrift store specifically for this day. Her son Michael was graduating from officer candidate school, and nothing in the world could have kept her away. At 45, Maria moved with a slight limp that most people wouldn't notice unless they were paying attention. Her dark hair, streaked with premature gray, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore no makeup, and her hands bore the calluses of someone who had worked hard their entire life. The only decoration she allowed herself was a small, worn patch sewn onto her canvas shoulder bag, a patch that meant everything to her but would mean nothing to most civilians. As she walked toward the main auditorium, Maria noticed the other parents arriving in luxury cars, dressed in designer clothes, their conversations filled with talk of country clubs and vacation homes. She kept her head high, focusing on the pride swelling in her chest. Michael had made it. Despite everything they'd been through, her boy was about to become an officer in the United States Army. "Excuse me, ma'am," a young military police officer approached her at the entrance. "I need to see your invitation." Maria reached into her bag and pulled out the crumpled invitation Michael had sent her. The officer examined it carefully, then looked at her truck in the parking lot and back at her simple dress. "This is for family members only," he said, his tone suggesting he doubted she belonged there. "I'm Michael Rodriguez's mother," Maria said quietly. The officer raised an eyebrow. "Rodriguez, the honor graduate." "Yes." He handed back the invitation reluctantly. "The VIP seating is to the left, general seating is to the right." Maria started toward the right, but a woman's sharp voice stopped her. "I think you're confused," said a blonde woman in pearls and a pink suit. She was standing with a group of other well-dressed parents. "The service entrance is around back. The ceremony doesn't need catering staff for another 2 hours." Maria turned slowly to face the woman. "I'm here for the graduation." The woman laughed, a tinkling sound that drew the attention of others nearby. "Oh, how nice. Is your employer's child graduating? That's very thoughtful of them to give you time off to watch." "My son is graduating," Maria said, her voice steady despite the heat rising in her cheeks. The woman's smile faltered for a moment, then returned even brighter. "Oh, how wonderful. The military really does provide opportunities for everyone, doesn't it? I'm Patricia Worthington. My husband is Senator Worthington. Our son James is graduating today as well. He'll be going straight to intelligence work, of course. Family connections, you understand." Patricia's group of friends tittered behind their manicured hands. One of them, a thin woman in designer sunglasses, added, "It's so important for these boys to have the right backgrounds for advancement. Command positions require a certain breeding." Maria said nothing. She had learned long ago that silence was often the best response to ignorance. She simply nodded and continued into the auditorium, finding a seat in the back row of the general section. From there, she could see the stage where her son would soon stand, and that was all that mattered. As the auditorium filled, Maria observed the clear social divisions. The front sections were reserved for VIPs, military brass, political figures, and wealthy families. The middle sections held the regular families, and the back was scattered with people like her, those who didn't quite fit the typical mold. A heavy-set man in an expensive suit took the seat next to her, then immediately stood up again. "Martha," he called to his wife, "there are better seats up front. Johnson said he saved us spots." As they moved, Maria heard him mutter to his wife, "Don't know why they don't screen these events better." Maria's hands clenched in her lap, but she forced them to relax. She touched the patch on her bag, drawing strength from it. Today was about Michael. Nothing else mattered. An elderly black woman took the vacated seat next to Maria. She had kind eyes and wore a simple floral dress. "First time at one of these?" she asked. "Yes," Maria replied. "My son is graduating." "My grandson," the woman said with a smile. "Third-generation military. I'm Rose, by the way." "Maria." "Don't let them bother you," Rose said, nodding toward the front sections. "Half these people bought their way in here. Their money might open doors, but it's boys like yours and mine who do the real work." Before Maria could respond, the ceremony began. The commandant of the academy, General Harrison, took the podium. He was a tall, stern-looking man with silver hair and sharp blue eyes. Maria noticed how the wealthy parents in the front rows sat up straighter, eager to be seen by him. "Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests," General Harrison began, "today we celebrate the newest officers of the United States Army. These men and women have completed one of the most challenging training programs in our military. They represent the best of our nation." As he spoke, Maria's mind drifted to her own military days, to a time when she had stood at attention while generals spoke of duty and honor. Her hand unconsciously moved to her left shoulder, where beneath her dress, scars told stories she never shared. The graduates began filing in, and Maria's breath caught when she saw Michael. He stood tall and proud in his dress uniform, his dark eyes scanning the crowd. When he spotted her, a brief smile crossed his face before returning to military bearing. He had her eyes, her determination, but his father's height and broad shoulders. His father, who had died in Iraq when Michael was only 3, another hero whose sacrifice was known only to a few. The ceremony proceeded with military precision. Awards were given, speeches were made, and finally the moment came for the special recognitions. General Harrison returned to the podium. "Before we proceed to the commissioning, I want to recognize our honor graduate, Officer Candidate Michael Rodriguez." Maria's heart swelled as Michael stepped forward. She heard whispers from the front rows. "Rodriguez, is he the one without any family connections? I heard he grew up in some trailer park. Probably an affirmative action case." Maria kept her eyes fixed on her son, refusing to let their words diminish this moment. General Harrison continued. "Officer Candidate Rodriguez achieved the highest scores in military tactics, leadership, and physical fitness. He also demonstrated exceptional moral courage during training, once carrying an injured fellow candidate 5 miles to safety during a training exercise. He exemplifies the Army values of loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage." The applause was polite but lukewarm from the VIP section. Maria clapped until her hands hurt, and she noticed Rose doing the same. After the individual recognitions, the commissioning ceremony began. Each graduate would take their oath and receive their lieutenant bars. Family members were invited to come forward to pin on the bars, a tradition that meant everything to military families. As the names were called alphabetically, Maria watched wealthy parents stride confidently to the stage. Patricia Worthington made a show of her walk to pin her son's bars, waving to people she knew, her diamonds catching the light. When Michael's name was called, Maria stood and began the long walk from the back of the auditorium. She felt hundreds of eyes on her, heard the whispers. "Is that his mother? She looks like she just came from cleaning houses. Poor boy, no wonder he worked so hard. He's trying to escape that life." Maria kept walking, her slight limp more noticeable now under the scrutiny. As she climbed the steps to the stage, she saw Patricia Worthington lean over to another woman and whisper something that made them both laugh. But when Maria reached Michael, all the noise faded away. Her son, her baby boy who she had raised alone, who had done his homework by candlelight when the electricity was cut off, who had worked 3 jobs to help pay rent while maintaining straight A's. He was looking at her with such love and pride that tears threatened to spill from her eyes. "Hi, Mom," he whispered. "Hi, baby," she whispered back, her hands steady as she pinned the lieutenant bars on his shoulders. "Your father would be so proud." "Thanks to you," he said quietly. "Everything I am is thanks to you." As they stood there for the official photo, Maria heard General Harrison clear his throat behind them. She turned slightly and saw him staring at her bag, specifically at the patch on it. His expression was curious, almost puzzled. The moment passed, and Maria returned to her seat. The ceremony continued with the oath of office, all the new lieutenants raising their right hands and speaking in unison. Maria mouthed the words along with them, remembering when she had taken a similar oath 23 years ago. After the ceremony ended, families gathered in the reception hall. Maria stood alone near the back, watching Michael be surrounded by his fellow graduates. She didn't want to embarrass him by pushing through the crowd of wealthy families. Patricia Worthington approached her, champagne glass in hand, followed by her group of friends. "It must be so overwhelming for you," she said with false sympathy. "All this military protocol and tradition, I imagine it's quite different from what you're used to." "I manage," Maria said simply. "I was just telling the general's wife about your son," Patricia continued. "It's so inspiring when people from disadvantaged backgrounds make something of themselves. Of course, he'll face challenges. The officer corps is still very much about who you know, family legacy, that sort of thing, but I'm sure he'll find his place, perhaps in supply or administration, something suitable. One of Patricia's friends added, "My husband says the army needs diversity now, for the image, you know. Your son will be perfect for their recruitment posters." Maria felt the familiar burn of anger in her chest, but before she could respond, she heard a sharp intake of breath behind her. She turned to see a colonel standing there, his face pale as he stared at her bag, more specifically at the patch. "Ma'am," he said, his voice slightly shaky, "that patch, where did you get it?" Patricia laughed. "Oh, Colonel Bryant, don't tell me she bought some fake military merchandise. These people sometimes don't understand that stolen valor is a crime." But Colonel Bryant wasn't listening to Patricia. His eyes were fixed on Maria. "That's a Delta Force patch, the skull with the lightning bolt. That's not just Delta Force, that's Task Force 88, the Ghost Unit." The conversation around them stopped. Patricia's smile froze on her face. "Ma'am," Colonel Bryant said again, more urgently now, "I need to know where you got that patch." Maria met his eyes steadily. "It's mine, Colonel." "That's impossible," Patricia interjected. "Women aren't in Delta Force and certainly not." She gestured dismissively at Maria. Colonel Bryant stepped closer, his voice dropping. "The scar on your left hand, that's from shrapnel, isn't it? And the way you walk favoring your right leg, Kandahar." Maria said nothing, but something in her eyes must have confirmed his suspicions because Colonel Bryant suddenly snapped to attention and saluted her. "It's you," he breathed. "Your Shadow 7, your Captain Maria Rodriguez." The silence in the reception hall was deafening. Patricia's champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. "That's impossible," Patricia stammered. She's the most decorated female soldier in classified operations," Colonel Bryant said, still at attention. "Ma'am, I was in Fallujah when your unit saved my entire company. We were pinned down for 18 hours. Command said no one could get to us. Then you and your team showed up out of nowhere, 12 operators against 200 insurgents. You held them off for 6 hours until air support arrived." Maria shifted uncomfortably. "Colonel, please, that's classified." "The operation is, ma'am, but your heroism isn't." He turned to the growing crowd. "This woman has 3 silver stars, 2 bronze stars, and a Distinguished Service Cross. She's the only woman ever admitted to Delta Force operations, and she spent 15 years in places so dangerous that most of them are still classified." General Harrison had approached during the colonel's speech. He looked at Maria with new eyes. "Captain Rodriguez, the Captain Rodriguez, you're Michael's mother." Maria nodded slightly. "Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you identify yourself? You should have been in the VIP section. Hell, you should have been on the stage." Maria looked at Michael, who had pushed through the crowd, his face beaming with pride. "I'm not on active duty anymore, General. I came here as a mother, nothing more." "But your record," General Harrison began, "is sealed, sir, and I prefer it that way." Maria's voice was firm but respectful. Patricia Worthington stood frozen, her face cycling through shades of red and white. But you look like a poor single mother," Maria supplied calmly. I left the military 7 years ago when Michael needed me more than the army did. I work at a hardware store now. I drive a truck that breaks down every other month. I shop at thrift stores. None of that changes who I was or who I am." "Why did you leave?" someone asked from the crowd. "With a record like that, you could have been a general by now." Maria's eyes found Michael again. "My last mission went wrong. I was captured, held for 3 months. She unconsciously touched her shoulder. "When I finally got home, I realized Michael had lost his father to war. He wasn't going to lose his mother too, so I walked away. No pension, no benefits. That was the deal for early separation from classified units. I walked away with nothing but my patch and my memories." "And your honor," General Harrison said quietly. "You walked away with your honor intact." The crowd was silent now, processing this revelation. Patricia Worthington looked like she might faint. "Mom," Michael said, his voice thick with emotion, "why didn't you ever tell me all of it? I knew you served, but this." Maria walked to her son and touched his face gently. "Because I wanted you to earn your place on your own merit, not riding on my classified coattails. And you did, baby. You earned every bit of this yourself." "But the way people treated you today," Michael's jaw clenched. "Means nothing," Maria interrupted. People's opinions of me have never mattered. Only the mission mattered, and then only you mattered. Colonel Bryant cleared his throat. Ma'am, if I may ask, what happened to the rest of Task Force 88? A shadow crossed Maria's face. Dead, Colonel, all of them. I'm the only one who made it home from that last mission. That's why I left. I couldn't lose another family. The weight of her words settled over the room. 11 elite operators, the best America had to offer, gone. And this woman, this unassuming mother in a thrift store dress, was the sole survivor. Mrs. Worthington, General Harrison said, his voice cold as he turned to Patricia. I believe you owe Captain Rodriguez an apology. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I didn't know. No, Maria said, cutting her off. You didn't know, and that's the point. You judged me based on my appearance, my economic status, my truck. You assumed I was less than you because I don't have wealth or social position. You don't owe me an apology for not knowing my military record. You owe me an apology for treating any human being as beneath you. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Patricia's friends had all stepped away from her, suddenly finding the floor very interesting. I need some air, Maria said quietly. She touched Michael's arm. I'm proud of you, son, so very proud. As she walked toward the door, every military person in the room saluted. The sight of dozens of officers saluting a woman in a simple blue dress created a surreal moment that would be talked about for years. Maria stepped outside into the warm afternoon sun. She found a bench under an old oak tree and sat down heavily. The adrenaline was wearing off and her leg was aching. It always did when she stood for too long. She pulled out her phone and looked at the wallpaper, a photo of Michael at age 5, wearing his father's old army cap that was far too big for his little head. He'd saluted the camera with such serious determination that it had made her laugh and cry at the same time. Ma'am. She looked up to see Rose, the elderly woman from the auditorium, standing there with 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need this, Rose said, offering a cup. Thank you, Maria accepted it gratefully. Rose sat down beside her. My late husband was Army Special Forces in Vietnam. He never talked about what he did either, but I always knew, the nightmares, the scars, the way he'd check every exit in a room. She paused, the way you do. Maria looked at her in surprise. Rose smiled. I noticed during the ceremony, you counted the exits, you positioned yourself with your back to the wall, you tracked every movement in that room while appearing to watch the stage. Old habits. They die hard, Maria admitted. My husband used to say the hardest part wasn't the missions. It was coming home and pretending to be normal. Maria nodded slowly. Every day I wake up and make breakfast, go to work, help customers find the right screws and bolts. And sometimes I forget that I once led raids on terrorist compounds. Sometimes I'm just Maria, the hardware store employee. Then something happens. A car backfires, someone moves too quickly in my peripheral vision, and I'm back there. But you came home, Rose said gently. You survived and you raised that fine young man in there. That's its own kind of heroism. Before Maria could respond, she heard footsteps approaching. General Harrison was walking toward them, followed by Michael and Colonel Bryant. Captain Rodriguez, the general said, I need to speak with you privately. Maria stood, wincing slightly. Sir, I'm retired, you don't need to. Please, he said, and something in his tone made her nod. They walked a short distance away, leaving the others by the bench. I pulled your file, General Harrison said quietly. Or rather, I tried to. It's sealed so tight I'd need presidential authorization to see most of it. But I know people who know people. The whispers about Task Force 88, about Shadow 7, they're legendary. Sir, the Kandahar incident, were you really held for 3 months? Maria's jaw tightened. 87 days, sir. And you never broke. It wasn't a question, but Maria answered anyway. They got nothing from me, sir. Not a single code, not a single name, not a single location. How? Maria was quiet for a long moment. I thought about Michael, sir. Every day, every torture session, every interrogation, I thought about my son, about how he needed his mother to come home, about how I couldn't let him grow up an orphan. That kept me alive. That kept me silent. General Harrison was quiet for a moment. You know, we've been looking for someone to head our new training program for special operations candidates. Someone with real experience, someone who understands sacrifice and survival. Sir, I'm not interested in. It's a civilian contractor position. Full benefits, flexible hours. You could even keep your hardware store job if you wanted. We'd only need you 2 weeks a month. The pay is substantial. Maria looked back at Michael, who was chatting animatedly with Colonel Bryant. Why? Because these kids, these new officers, they need to learn from someone real, not some political appointee or academy theorist. They need someone who's been in the dirt, who's made the hard calls, who's survived the impossible. I'll think about it, Maria said. There's one more thing, General Harrison said. He pulled out his phone and showed her a message. This just came through from SOCOM. They want to award you the Medal of Honor for the last mission. Posthumously, they thought, until about an hour ago when I informed them you're very much alive. Maria's blood ran cold. No. Captain. No, sir. Respectfully, absolutely not. I don't want it. I don't deserve it. 11 people died on that mission. 11 heroes who should be getting medals, not me. You saved 32 prisoners of war. You held off an entire enemy battalion alone for 6 hours after your team fell. I survived, General, that's all. I'm not a hero for surviving when better people didn't. General Harrison studied her for a long moment. You really believe that, don't you? Yes, sir. He sighed. Very well. I'll inform them of your wishes. But, Captain, someday you're going to have to forgive yourself for living. As he walked away, Maria stood alone for a moment, letting his words sink in. Then Michael was there, wrapping her in a hug that lifted her off her feet. Mom, why didn't you ever tell me? She touched his face when he set her down. What would I say? Hey, son, Mommy used to kill bad guys for a living. You were a child. You needed a mother, not a war story. But all these years, people looking down on you, treating you like a single mother working a minimum wage job, Maria smiled. That's what I am, Michael. That's what I chose to be for you. You gave up everything for me. No, baby, I gave up nothing. I gained everything. I got to watch you grow up. I got to help with homework and go to your baseball games and teach you to drive. I got to be your mom. That's worth more than all the medals in the world. Colonel Bryant approached them hesitantly. Ma'am, I hate to interrupt, but there's someone else who wants to meet you. Maria turned to see a young female lieutenant standing at attention, her eyes bright with something between awe and tears. She couldn't have been more than 23, fresh-faced and eager in her new uniform. At ease, Lieutenant, Maria said gently, falling back into old habits. Ma'am, I'm Lieutenant Sarah Chen. I had to meet you. When I was going through officer candidate school, they told us women couldn't serve in special operations combat roles, that we weren't strong enough, tough enough. But there were rumors about a woman who did, someone they called Shadow 7. My drill sergeant said it was just a legend, a story to motivate us. But you're real. You're actually real. Maria felt the weight of the young woman's expectations. Lieutenant, You're proof that we can do anything, ma'am, that we belong in every part of the military, not just the positions they think are suitable for women. Sarah's voice cracked slightly. Do you know what it means to us, to all the female soldiers, to know you exist? Before Maria could respond, more people began approaching. Word had spread through the reception hall like wildfire, and suddenly Maria found herself surrounded by young officers, both male and female, all wanting to hear something, anything, from the legendary Shadow 7. Please, ma'am, just tell us one thing, a young man asked. How did you make it through selection? They say Delta Force selection breaks everyone. Maria looked at the eager faces around her. These kids, because that's what they were to her, kids, they wanted war stories, they wanted inspiration. They wanted to believe in something bigger than themselves. You really want to know? She asked quietly. They all nodded. Maria sat back down on the bench, and they gathered around her like children at story time. Michael stood behind her, his hand on her shoulder. I was 22 when I tried out for selection, she began. The only woman in a class of 200 men. The instructors told me I didn't belong there. The other candidates told me I was taking a spot from someone who deserved it. By day 3, they had bets going on when I'd quit. She paused, remembering. The physical stuff was hard, sure, carrying logs that weighed more than I did, running until I threw up, then running some more. But that wasn't what nearly broke me. What was? Lieutenant Chen asked. The isolation. They separated me from the others, said it was for my own protection, but really it was to break me down. I ate alone, slept alone, trained alone. The men bonded over their shared misery. I had no one. Maria touched her bag's patch absently. On day 10, we had to do a 40-mile ruck march with 80 pounds of gear. In the rain, in the mountains. My feet were bleeding after the first 5 miles. By mile 20, I couldn't feel them anymore. The medic following us kept trying to get me to stop, said I was going to permanently damage myself. "What did you do?" someone asked. "I sang," Maria said with a small smile. "Every song I could remember. Disney songs, rock songs, hymns my grandmother taught me. Anything to keep my mind off the pain. The men thought I'd lost it. Here's this small woman, blood squishing in her boots, singing the wheels on the bus at the top of her lungs." A few of them chuckled. By mile 30, 3 of the men had joined in. By mile 35, half the group was singing. We finished that march together, all 24 of us who didn't quit, singing Bohemian Rhapsody as we crossed the finish line. "And they accepted you after that?" Lieutenant Chen asked hopefully. Maria shook her head. "No, they made it harder. The instructors were furious that I'd finished. They added extra weight to my pack, gave me longer routes, less time to complete tasks. They wanted me to quit so badly they broke their own rules trying to make it happen." "But you didn't quit." "No, because every time they told me I couldn't do something, I remembered every woman who had been told the same thing. Every girl who wanted to serve her country but was told she wasn't strong enough. I wasn't just carrying my own dreams, I was carrying theirs too." An older man in a veteran's cap had joined the crowd. "Were you the first woman to pass?" "The first to try, actually," Maria said. "They didn't want me there, but I had a legal right to attempt selection thanks to an equal opportunity complaint I'd filed. They had to let me try, but they didn't have to make it easy." "How did you finally get them to accept you?" Michael asked. It was clear this was new to him too. Maria was quiet for a long moment. "The final week of selection, they do psychological evaluations. They try to break your mind after your body has given up. They put me in a box, a small, dark box, for 24 hours. No food, no water, no bathroom breaks, just darkness and silence." Several people winced. "But I grew up in worse," Maria continued. "My stepfather used to lock me in a closet when I was a kid, sometimes for days. I learned to go somewhere else in my mind, to build entire worlds in the darkness. So when they put me in that box, I just went to my safe place. After 24 hours, they opened it expecting to find me broken. Instead, I was doing push-ups. I looked at the instructor and said, 'Is that all you've got?'" Someone whistled low. The head of selection, a colonel named Barnes, called me into his office that night. He said, "Rodriguez, you're too stubborn to quit and too damn good to fail. But if I pass you, you'll be going into units where women have never been. You'll face things that will make selection look like summer camp. Are you prepared for that?" "What did you say?" Lieutenant Chen asked, hanging on every word. "I said, sir, I've been preparing for it my whole life. Being a woman in this world is already combat. At least in Delta Force, I'll be allowed to fight back." The crowd was silent, absorbing her words. General Harrison had returned, standing at the edge of the group. "Did Colonel Barnes ever tell you what he wrote in your selection report?" Maria looked up at him in surprise. "No, sir, those reports are classified." "Not anymore, not yours anyway. It was declassified last year as part of the integration review." He pulled out his phone and read, "Candidate Rodriguez represents the finest warrior spirit I have encountered in 20 years of selection. Her physical capabilities, while impressive, are overshadowed by her mental fortitude and tactical brilliance. She doesn't just meet the Delta standard, she redefines it. Any unit would be privileged to have her." Maria felt tears prick her eyes. She had never known what Barnes had written, had always wondered if she'd barely scraped by. "There's more," General Harrison continued. "If the Army is foolish enough to waste this soldier's talents because of her gender, we deserve to lose our next war. Mark my words, Rodriguez will become legendary." "Looks like he was right," someone in the crowd murmured. Patricia Worthington had appeared at the edge of the group, her earlier bravado completely gone. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. Her husband, a tall man in an expensive suit, stood beside her looking confused. "Patricia," he said, "what's going on? Who is this woman?" Patricia couldn't meet his eyes. "This is Michael Rodriguez's mother." "The scholarship kid, why is everyone—" He stopped as he noticed the way the military personnel were looking at Maria. "I don't understand." "She's a war hero, Richard," Patricia said quietly. "A real one." Senator Worthington looked at Maria more carefully, taking in her simple dress, her worn shoes, her weathered hands. You're military. I was, sir, Maria replied simply. What rank? I retired as a captain, sir. He frowned. Captain, then why all the fuss? We know plenty of captains. Colonel Bryant spoke up. Sir, with respect, you know plenty of regular Army captains. Captain Rodriguez was Delta Force, Special Operations, the kind of soldier whose missions you'll never hear about because they're so classified that acknowledging them would cause international incidents. The senator's face paled slightly. Delta Force doesn't have women. Officially, no, General Harrison said. Unofficially, they had one, they had her. Maria stood, uncomfortable with all the attention. If you'll excuse me, I need to. Wait, Patricia said suddenly. Please, I need to apologize. The crowd grew quiet, watching. Patricia's hands trembled as she spoke. I've spent my whole life thinking I was better than people like you. People who work with their hands, who drive old trucks, who shop at thrift stores. I thought money and social position made me superior. She took a shaky breath. But you've done things I could never do. You've sacrificed in ways I can't even imagine, and you did it all without seeking recognition or reward. Mrs. Worthington, Maria began. Please let me finish, Patricia said. My son, James, he joined the military because he thought it would look good on his political resume. A few years as an officer, then out to pursue his real ambitions. But you, your son, you both serve because you believe in something bigger than yourselves. She turned to her own son, who had been standing nearby looking uncomfortable. James, you could learn from this woman, from her son, about what real service means. James Worthington stepped forward hesitantly. He was a handsome young man, but there was a softness to him that spoke of privilege and ease. Ma'am, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Maria told him gently. Just serve with honor, that's all any of us can do. Would you tell us about a mission? James asked, surprising everyone, including his mother. Not classified details, just what it was like. Maria looked at Michael, who nodded encouragingly. She sighed and sat back down. All right, one story. There was a village in Afghanistan. I can't tell you where exactly. Taliban forces had taken over a school and were holding 40 children hostage. They wanted to trade them for prisoners we were holding. The crowd pressed closer. Command said it was too risky. The village was in a valley surrounded by mountains, perfect for an ambush. Any large force would be spotted miles away, so they sent us. 6 operators, including me. She paused, lost in the memory. We hiked for 2 days through the mountains to get above the village without being detected. No sleep, minimal water, carrying everything we needed. When we finally got into position, we realized the intelligence was wrong. It wasn't 40 children, it was 60. And there weren't 20 Taliban fighters, there were 50. 6 against 50, someone breathed. We radioed for abort authorization. Command said if we left, the children would be executed. If we went in, we'd probably die, but maybe some kids would live. Maria's voice grew quiet. That's not really a choice, is it? What did you do? Lieutenant Chen asked. We went in, middle of the night, no moon. I took point. I was the smallest, could move through spaces the men couldn't. We eliminated the sentries silently, but then everything went wrong. One of the children woke up and screamed. Suddenly, 50 fighters were awake and grabbing weapons. Maria unconsciously rubbed her left shoulder. I made a choice. I ran into the main room where the children were, putting myself between them and the fighters, and opened fire. Made myself the biggest target I could. The fighters focused on me while my team got into position. You used yourself as bait, Colonel Bryant said with awe. It worked. My team took out most of the fighters while they were trying to kill me. I took 3 bullets, shoulder, leg, and ribs, but I kept firing, kept their attention. 27 minutes of close quarters combat. When it was over, all 6 of us were wounded but alive, and all 60 children went home to their families. The crowd was silent, absorbing the reality of what combat really meant. The families in that village still send me letters, Maria said softly. Pictures of their children growing up, getting married, having children of their own. 60 lives that got to continue. That makes everything else worth it. The scars, Michael said suddenly. The ones you said were from a car accident. Maria looked at her son with sad eyes. You were 8, what was I supposed to say? The truth, he said, his voice thick with emotion. The truth would have given you nightmares. The truth would have made you afraid every time I left for work training. The truth would have stolen your childhood. Maria stood and took his face in her hands. You deserve to be a kid, not the son of someone who... Someone who's a hero, Michael interrupted. My mother is a hero and I never knew. I'm not a hero, baby, I'm just... You're my hero, he said firmly. You always have been, even when I thought you were just a single mom working at a hardware store. The way you never complained, never gave up, always put me first. That was heroic. This, he gestured to the crowd of awed faces. This just explains where that strength came from. A young sergeant pushed through the crowd, his face flushed with excitement. Ma'am, is it true you were part of Operation Iron Shield? The silence that fell was immediate and complete. Even the civilians could tell this was significant by the way every military person present suddenly looked shocked. Maria's face went very still. Sergeant, that operation doesn't exist. But it doesn't exist. Her tone left no room for discussion. General Harrison stepped in. Sergeant, you're dismissed. The young man saluted and quickly left, but the damage was done. Everyone was now wondering about Operation Iron Shield. I think I've said enough, Maria said quietly. This is Michael's day, not mine. But before she could leave, an older man in a wheelchair was rolled forward by a younger woman. He wore a navy uniform with more ribbons than Maria could count, and his eyes were sharp despite his age. Shadow 7, he said, his voice gravelly. Maria froze, then slowly turned. Admiral Morrison. It is you, the Admiral said, his eyes misting. They told me you were dead. Sir, You saved my daughter, he said loud enough for everyone to hear. Operation Iron Shield. She was on that diplomatic convoy in Syria. When it was ambushed, everyone wrote them off. 37 diplomatic personnel, including my Jessica. Command said it was impossible to get them out. Maria stood rigid, saying nothing. But you and your team did the impossible. Again, you got them all out. 37 souls, including my little girl. She's a mother now, you know, 3 kids. They exist because you decided impossible wasn't acceptable. He reached out with a shaking hand, and Maria took it gently. I've been looking for you for 7 years, he said. To say thank you, to tell you that Jessica named her first daughter Maria after the angel who carried her out of hell. Tears were flowing down Maria's cheeks now, the first anyone had seen from her. How's Jessica doing, sir? She asked quietly. Wonderful, she's a teacher now. Married a good man, another teacher, they're happy. He squeezed her hand. She still has nightmares sometimes, but she's alive to have them. I'm glad, sir, so glad. The Admiral's daughter wheeled him back, but not before he rendered a perfect salute, which Maria returned. The crowd was growing larger now, word spreading throughout the base about who was in attendance. Maria felt the walls closing in, the weight of all these expectations and memories. I need to go, she said suddenly. Mom, wait, Michael started. I'm sorry, baby, this is too much. I need air. She pushed through the crowd, her breathing becoming rapid. She made it outside and around the corner of the building before her legs gave out. She slid down the wall, pulling her knees to her chest, struggling to breathe. This was why she'd hidden, why she'd become invisible. Because the weight of being Shadow 7, of being a symbol, of carrying everyone's hopes and expectations, it was too much. Breathe, Rodriguez. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. She looked up to see Colonel Bryant crouched in front of her. That's it, he said calmly. Just breathe. I know this feeling, the walls closing in, the weight of everyone wanting a piece of you. I can't be what they want, Maria gasped. I can't be their symbol or their inspiration. I'm just trying to survive each day. PTSD, he asked gently. She nodded. Among other things, you don't come back from that life unchanged. No, you don't, he agreed. I did 3 tour in special operations, not at your level, but enough to understand. The nightmares. Every night. The hypervigilance. Can't turn it off. The guilt. Maria's voice broke. 11 of my brothers died on that last mission, 11 heroes who should be here instead of me. Bryant sat down beside her. Can I tell you something? That mission you ran in Fallujah, saving my company, 3 of those men you saved went on to become doctors. 2 became teachers. 1 became a social worker specializing in veteran mental health. Between them, they've probably saved or improved thousands of lives. That's your legacy, too. It doesn't bring back my team. No, it doesn't, but dishonoring their sacrifice by hiding your light doesn't bring them back either. He paused. Those young officers in there, especially the women, they need to know what's possible. They need to see that someone like them can be extraordinary. I'm not extraordinary, I'm broken. You're both, Bryant said simply. That's what makes you human, and that's what makes you the perfect person to teach them. Before Maria could respond, Michael appeared around the corner. Mom. I'm okay, baby. Michael sat on her other side, taking her hand. No, you're not, and that's okay. You don't have to be okay all the time. I'm supposed to be strong for you. You are strong, but strong doesn't mean unbreakable. He squeezed her hand. All these years you've been carrying this alone. You don't have to anymore. General Harrison appeared, keeping a respectful distance. Captain Rodriguez, I apologize. I should have handled this better. I should have protected your privacy. Maria wiped her eyes and stood, Bryant and Michael helping her up. It's not your fault, General. The past has a way of catching up, no matter how far we run. The offer stands, Harrison said. The training position, you could help shape the next generation of warriors on your terms. I'll think about it, Maria said again. As they walked back toward the reception, they found the crowd had spilled outside. Hundreds of people, soldiers, families, base personnel who'd heard the commotion, all waiting. Patricia Worthington stood at the front, and to everyone's surprise, she started clapping. Slowly, others joined in until the applause was thunderous. Maria stopped, overwhelmed. These people, they weren't clapping for Shadow 7 or Delta Force or classified missions. They were clapping for her, for the sacrifice she represented, for the quiet strength of those who serve in silence. Michael leaned close. They're clapping for my mom, the one who helped me with homework and made pancakes on Sunday and never missed a baseball game, because that's heroic too. As the sun began to set over Fort Benning, Maria stood there, surrounded by her son and newfound supporters, and for the first time in 7 years, she didn't feel alone with her ghosts.